welcome on the show. My feeling is the way that we could approach this here is like, I could read your resume, but really like to get to know you. One normally starts sort of like at the beginning and maybe a little summary. So why on earth are you so interested in a women's health and natural? Would it be natural health? How would you describe this sort of like field you're really playing in?
So I guess I would almost call it holistic health.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate to say that these days because I feel like the word is overused. So there's 3 pillars to my work: biochemical, nutritional, and emotional. That's why I consider it to be holistic.
Gotcha.
And yeah, that's kind of come about because I went to uni for 14 years, which I know makes me sound really thick and like I failed everything or had too much fun, which is also true. But I very much loved learning, and I still do. So I originally studied nutrition and dietetics and then did honours and then did a PhD in biochemistry. So there's lots of science in my background. But since then, I've worked with people one-on-one for about 25 years. Right. And that's where you get to see what really makes a difference in someone's life and also what doesn't. You see what works and what doesn't work. And so I've combined my 14 years at uni with my 25 years of clinical experience to create those 3 pillars in my work.
Yeah.
And I came to see very clearly in working with people that holistic lens is incredibly valuable to look at all health conditions. I see the body as this most magnificent mechanism offering us feedback all the time. I see symptoms as information.
Yeah.
And so that's, I care very much about women's health because I can't bear unnecessary suffering.
Yeah, fair enough. So those 3 pillars, remind me. So
biochemical, nutritional, and emotional.
Right. Is the one that sort of is more important than the other, or does it really depend on the individual?
I almost want to say the emotional or mindset side of it is the most powerful because that has such a big influence over then what we do with nutrition. So, for example, if we have a conscious or unconscious belief that we're not worth taking care of, then we're not necessarily going to feel like we want to cook dinner for ourselves and support ourselves nutritionally. We're much more likely to think, what does it matter? I'm worthless. I'll just get takeaway every night of my life and not really focus on that. So if I was going to pick one that was more important, I'd say the emotional, more mindset type pillar. But then when we neglect nutrition and biochemistry, emotions can fall apart. So they really do all feed each other.
So what you described there is sort of like a habit that, is formed of like, I'm not worth it. Therefore I buy cheap food or, just food that is not good for me.
Yeah.
Not necessarily cheap. What's the connection though about the mindset and actual physical symptoms? Like, have you seen that playing out for people?
Oh, very much so. Yes. So, and that's where I use the body as this magnificent mechanism of feedback. So, for example, if someone, and this is not my work, this is what information I've learned from lots of other people and having read lots of books and attended lots of courses, but you get to see that there are patterns of behavior that then can often foster certain symptoms in people. So, constipation, hanging on to everything, but it also could be a magnesium deficiency. When you constantly get tonsillitis, or for some women it might be an underactive thyroid, it might be anger or resentment that's built up because we're not expressing ourselves or expressing our needs. And I'm being very general here. So for anyone listening, just park that if it doesn't resonate. But all of that is really worth exploring.
Yeah.
But that's never, for me, at the expense of what could physically be also happening. So, for example, the thyroid needs iodine and iron and zinc and selenium. And so if your thyroid isn't working properly because of one of those nutrient insufficiencies or deficiencies, then no amount of emotional work will clear it. Sorting out the nutritional deficiency is. So that's why I use a phrase in my work: the road in is the road out. Whatever's created the challenge, we want to understand that, because when we correct that or address that, the person gets better and the symptom goes away.
Oh, wow.
I have written 13 books and my 14th one is available for pre-sale right now. Actually, it comes out at the end of the month.
How did you get into that? That's a lot of work. I mean, each book is a lot of work, right?
It is, yeah. You're very sweet to acknowledge that. So I love writing. My mum gave me a diary when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And we had chickens in the backyard. So all the only diary entries I have in that diary is how many eggs I collected from the chickens each day. But that got me into the habit of daily writing. And while I don't do that now, very sadly, it does help me when I get back into that pattern. But I was in that pattern of daily pages, daily writing from a very, very young age. And when I finished high school, it was the only thing I knew I wanted to do was to write. So I originally studied journalism. I changed course. It was not what I wanted to do, I realized, but I originally studied journalism because I loved writing. And it's a privilege to be able to write a book because you spend a lot of time down a rabbit hole around a topic and really getting to know it deeply. And I feel very privileged that I got the education that I did. And I also realized that that's all wasted if we don't pass it on. And I know books are less appealing to a lot of people these days, although people love audiobooks these days as well. But I just think it's such a great way to learn in such an efficient way because someone else has done the hard work for you on a particular topic.
Yes.
So I write to share the information that I have or that I've learned.
Yeah. Yes. Books. Even though I'm dyslexic, I'm so grateful for books because it's such a good way to have condensed knowledge, but also really well reflected knowledge. I'm actually not someone who watches a lot of podcasts because I feel often what happens in podcasts, it's a stream of consciousness and can be really interesting, but it's not as refined, not as deep as books ever can be. And if you need a resource to really understand something, I think the book is the way to go. Podcasts give you a couple more nuances, it's maybe a bit more up to date, but yeah.
That's a beautiful insight. Yeah, I'd not contemplated that. It's very true. I think sometimes a podcast might lead someone to a topic that they then explore more thoroughly in a book, for example.
Yes, yeah.
Lovely.
And it's great to, live in a time where you don't have to wait for months to order a book through the library. And things have really sped up, right? Yeah. Which is probably part of, like, some of your books, I'm sure, talk about the busyness of life nowadays. But before I go there, what was your first title?
The first book I wrote was called Accidentally Overweight.
So a weight loss book?
Well, it was about, I'd never weighed a patient. I'd never had a set of scales in my office. But I had, when a patient would walk through the door, I'd say, how can I help? What do you want to get out of this session?
Yeah.
And the majority of my patients were female and they would say, I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
And I would note that down because, respectfully, I wanted to acknowledge what they wanted to achieve. But I would then set about asking them at least 50 questions, probably more. It would take at least an hour to ask all my questions, everything from do you get headaches? Do you get sinus congestions? Do you get reflux? Do you use your bowels every day? What's menstruation like? What was your menopause like? Tell me about your sleep. Tell me about your stress and your perceptions of things, of all sorts of topics in your life. So I would ask all these questions and very few, if any, I want to say no one, but that might not be totally accurate, but pretty much no one is all good in all those areas. So I would then set about correcting the headaches or the sinus problems or the reflux or the diarrhea or the bloating or the heavy periods or the painful periods. I would set about trying to correct those things. And what I saw very quickly is that if it would be health benefit to a person to carry less body fat, that was a consequence of fixing the health problem. So if I was able through dietary change or beautiful medicinal herbs or nutrient supplementation, if I was able to correct the dry skin or the reflux, then if weight loss, in inverted commas, would be of benefit to someone, that was a natural occurrence. Not because we focused on counting calories and weighing food and smashing ourselves with heaps of exercise. It was just a natural occurrence of better health. And that's why I've always looked at health through that lens of metabolism. And it was what helped me to develop that 3-pillar approach as well, because there are a lot of people who know what to eat, but they don't necessarily do it. And I always wanted to answer the question, why do we do what we do, even though we know what we know? So that first book, Accidentally Overweight, looks at essentially weight loss through those 3 lenses, but I talk about the 9 factors that are essential for us to be able to use body fat effectively as a fuel in that book.
So it's a result. It's not like the result. The overweight is a result of other things that are going on in the body. And It's not as simple we eat too much.
No, because no one does that going, I'm going to feel amazing being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be amazing with all of the consequences of, and that's why when we say, like, knowledge is important, absolutely. But for a lot of people, it's not that lack of knowledge that leads them to polish off a packet of chocolate biscuits after dinner. No one does that thinking, I'm going to feel so good after I do this. They do it and then they don't understand why they've done it because they actually know better. And if someone like me as a nutrition professional just sits in a consultation with someone and goes, oh, tut, for goodness sake, stop eating the biscuits, then they just feel worse about themselves and they'll keep doing it. So can I tell you a story?
Yeah,
Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, definitely.
So there was, I'll try and do this without getting emotional because this lady had a big impact on myself, but also the way I see, I guess, this more emotional side of work. So this beautiful lady came to see me as a patient. She was 60 years old when I saw her. And when she walked in, I said, how can I help? What do you want to get out of the session? And she said, well, I'm here to lose weight, but I can't stop eating cake after dinner. So if your only solution, Libby, is to tell me to stop eating the cake, I may as well leave because I know I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
Anyway, in she came, asked all my questions. And then I get to the point in the session where I say, are your parents still alive? And because I've only asked at that point, because I've only asked about their physical symptoms, people think I'm looking for a family history. So did your parents have heart disease or cancer?
Yeah.
And I sort of am looking for that. But what I'm really looking for is the way someone responds when I bring up their mum and dad. And it was very obvious that there was a lot of emotion there. And I asked this lady if she would expand on it. And she said her mother died giving birth to her and her father hadn't spoken to her since she was 14 years old. And when I was living and working in New Zealand at this point, and she said when she was 4, she'd grown up in Ireland, and she said, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and she grew up there with her big brothers and her dad. And she said, I was really good at school and I helped with the house, but then when I was 14, my dad wrote a letter and he put me on a boat and sent me to New Zealand to be raised by a distant aunt, and I never heard from him again. And she said, so beliefs, the way I understand psychology, which is minimal, but it's helped me hugely with my work with people, beliefs and values drive behavior. And so I'm always listening for what people believe because our beliefs are really slippery. We know what we believe about things outside of us. So we know what we think about that environmental policy or that political party or the family that lives in that house down the road, but we're not very good at knowing what we believe about ourselves. We say it, it's all tied up in our language, but we don't notice that that's a belief. We think it's real. But she gave it to me straight away. She said, he loved my brothers enough to keep them. He didn't love me enough to keep me. So you can understand why she thinks that's the truth, but it's a belief. And I said to her, what if the opposite's true? And what if he sent you away because he loved you so much? I said, you think about it from his perspective. He was already sort of halfway through his life. You were the only girl. You lived in the middle of nowhere. You were good at school, you said. So he'll have wanted you to get a way better education than you were ever going to have living so remotely. You were female. You were in a house full of boys. Someone had probably told him about menstruation and he wanted you to be supported by a female when that happened. So what if he sent you away because he loved you so much? And she said, I'd never thought about it like that. And she'd shared that he was still alive. And I said, is there any way you could get in touch with him? And she said, I could probably get a phone number. And I said, could you ring him and ask him why he sent you away? And to my absolute astonishment, she found the courage inside of herself to do that. And he gave her a version of what I just said to you.
Wow.
That he wanted her to have a better life that he could never give her.
Yeah.
So she lived her life in the cloud of false belief from the age of 14 to the age of 60 that he didn't love her when the opposite was true. So she doesn't sit on the couch at night going, Dad doesn't love me, I better eat cake. She just doesn't understand why she does that and can't stop, even though it's hurting her. And so when I talk about the 3 pillars and when I talk about accidentally overweight, that's part of the emotional side of it is let's understand or let's get curious about our own behaviors instead of judging ourselves harshly for not being able to follow rules or consistently look after ourselves with food or whatever it is. Let's get curious about why and see what bubbles to the surface. So she was a great inspiration to me in continuing to pursue that as part of my work.
Yeah.
And because I didn't sit there and say to her, don't eat the cake. She just stopped. She would have still had it when she went out for a cup of tea with her friends. that's no problem. But it was that every day having the cake after dinner that was hurting her. But me telling her to stop was never going to get her to stop.
So in a way, she sort of was a bandage to feel a little bit sweetness in her life when the thoughts maybe are not helpful because she always thought she was rejected.
That's right.
Oh,
Beautifully said. Yep. And that doesn't take away from the biochemical side of it, and the other 8 factors in the book are things like insulin resistance and thyroid function and liver fat accumulation, what's happening with sex hormones. So all of those, what's happening with our nervous system, all of that impacts whether the body gets the message to store fat or burn fat. So it pulls our health apart in a different way.
Yeah. This is a question I'm sure you hear a lot, but like, when you think about the medical system, there's an expectation of what this medical system does in the medical professionals, which is basically everything to do with the body and with our health. But I think what I certainly have learned sort of over time is that that can't be delivered. That expectation is wrongly put on a system that is not nuanced enough to really help people on any problem they have. It's really quite narrow of like, we can fix something that happens to you right now, can't fix something that will happen 10 years ago away in the future, even though we can already see that it sort of started, because that means you have to have a holistic view, which medicine is not really good in giving. Do you think that's still true? I mean, that's my sort of idea of a medical system. It has its place, but it's quite patched, and it's definitely nothing holistic there.
I feel that it's the customer, if you like, or the patient's expectation that almost needs to change, because they're extraordinary at emergency medicine.
Extraordinary.
And if you have a car crash, that's the medicine for you in that moment. So what a privilege that we have access to that.
Yeah.
But what you're touching on, and I wholeheartedly agree, is the lifestyle conditions that are chronic, that just very slowly, very gradually unfold in our life. Modern medicine is not equipped to deal with that. They have the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. So they have a medication once you've developed type 2 diabetes, but they're not talking to you about changing what you're eating and how you're moving and how you're thinking and the other lifestyle factor, your sleep. They're not talking to you about those sorts of things to help prevent it in the first place. But that's not their training. So they're brilliant at diagnosing, and they're brilliant at matching medicine to a diagnosis. And I feel that as patients, we need to understand that if that's what we want, they're the best people to see. But when it comes to, if you want to approach a condition that might be slowly unfolding in you, or a condition you've been diagnosed with, if you want to approach it in a more holistic way, then they possibly don't have the answer for you to support you with the way you want to do things. There are obviously integrative doctors, functional doctors now who look at things far more holistically and broadly. But I feel very sorry for GPs who are on this time schedule of, I think it's 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, something. It's tiny, the amount of time they have. An older lady who is a dear friend of mine went to her GP recently, and she went with 6 things on a list to discuss, and they said, we only have time for 2. And that's a broken system, isn't it? When an elderly lady can't have all her questions answered in one appointment, she has to go back with her other 4 questions.
I can see there's you can't fit everything in one mind there to help, especially if a system that is so young. I mean, how old is it? 150 years, something like that. Newton maybe started, something like that.
It's very young.
Very young, maybe a little bit older. But if you go to more traditional medicines that are out there, like the Ayurvedic and the traditional Chinese medicine, there are probably quite a few that I'm not even aware of, but they seem to have figured out a way to make it possible that one mind can hold most of it and can analyze it. I wonder, just while you probably have thought about this too, what's your take on that? I'm really interested to actually hear, because that's the issue, right? Like, you can't be a specialist. I actually go often when I go to a GP, which is rare, more with my kids every now and then, they go onto Google, which shows exactly that. They don't have all they say this looks like something like that. Let me see what the symptoms are, because they can't hold it all in their head. Whereas traditional seem to have like a foundation that they go back to that makes it possible to address what they see.
I think there's a couple of things in that, and
Right.
I have thought about it a lot. I think that the training was in pattern recognition, and so I think again, questions are the answers, aren't they? So you'd ask the person lots of questions. You would also observe aspects of their appearance, their face, their pallor. They'd look at the tongue, they feel the pulse. So they're gathering a lot of, in traditional Chinese medicine, obviously, they're gathering a lot of information through lots of senses that the practitioner would. And then they would piece all of that information together into patterns of whatever, liver insufficiency, liver yang excess, so that everything sort of fell into patterns. So I think that was part of it. But also, and I'll give you the basis to this little story in a second, they also didn't have, a system that said, if X, then Y, which is what our modern medicine has become. It was far more nuanced, and they understood that the person's perceptions and almost their personality traits can come into play, whereas that's obviously not considered today. When I was I had the crazy privilege of being a speaker at a beautiful wellness event in the Maldives about 18 months ago now, and there was a really, really inspiring medical doctor there, and she had resolved she'd had cancer, but she was now cancer-free, and she'd done it herself in a very holistic way, and she now passes that information on to others. She's a truly extraordinary human being. But she said to me, your brilliance comes because you could never use medicine. And they were her words, not mine. But she was acknowledging that in my work, I'd been looking for these patterns. I'd been looking for these bigger picture things because I'm not a medical doctor. I have a PhD in biochemistry. I can't prescribe pharmaceutical medicines. So I had to find other ways.
Yep.
Dietary change, sunlight exposure, sleep. Tell me what stresses you. Tell me about your perception of that. Tell me what was happening when you were growing up.
Yep.
What were your childhood illnesses? So it was so I think probably more traditional medicines gather a lot more information, see patterns, and then they don't just have that if X then Y sort of view of the system. So I think it's a bit of all of that.
Fascinating.
That's just my take.
Yeah.
Could be completely wrong.
Do you see there's hope that the systems, the traditional ones and the modern medicine, to marry more?
Yes.
Can you see? Yes.
And I think we're just seeing the beginning of that now.
Yeah.
And I was, again, very privileged to be part of an organisation in Australia called the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine back in the 1990s. And I saw then the real beginning of GPs who were really sick and tired of just prescribing antibiotics for kids' infections, for example. They were looking for a broader perspective. So they were doing additional training in nutritional environmental medicine to have more in their toolkit to help their patients. And I see that more and more now. And that's why I mentioned the functional doctors, the integrative doctors who now call themselves that so that people can distinguish between the type of medicine they offer. So they're conventionally trained GPs, but they've done additional education and in nutritional medicine usually, and it's brilliant.
Just knowing that there is an avenue is already helpful, because then they would say, actually, you know what you need. I have the story. Someone had a car accident, and for whatever reason, that person afterwards, she was probably 13, could just not eat anymore. And the mother went to different doctors, couldn't really figure it out. And then at one stage, she went to an iridologist. Said, like, something, we just have to figure it out because, you can't hold your food in. And that iridologist knew, like, he said, oh, I can see you were in a car accident. And she said, look, I mean, it wasn't a bad one. It was just, I was strapped in. It was all good. It was actually New Zealand. And and somehow they kept talking, and he's like, I can see that something's not quite right with the ribs. So he couldn't help with the ribs. He can just analyze, if you like. But he said, go to a chiropractic or something like that. They will put it into place. That should be all that is needed. And it fixed her, like overnight. And so if you think about it, like, he could not help her as such, but he knew there was an avenue that everything was pointing to. So he doesn't have to be the person that actually understands how to put ribs back into place. and that's how I see sort of like the future, that people they might have their speciality, but they're trained enough to know like, hey, I need to hand you over to this specialist, or specialist is maybe not quite the right word, but it's this field that we're really dealing with. I don't know anything about this field by here, like a nutritionist. I move you on to a nutritionist, psychologist, whatever it might be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
And the more we do that, the more people will be supported.
Yeah. Do you think AI will play a role to sort of help distinguishing what you actually need and what can be helped? Not that it becomes a doctor, but like helping there in that sense.
Obviously, like probably most people in the health kind of arena, I see the benefits and the drawbacks of that.
Yeah.
And I feel that the human touch can never be replaced. I think what we feel in the moment when you're sitting with someone and something washes across a patient's face, obviously AI is never going to get that vibe that, or it might be that you just have this feeling in your heart, like a tenderness might come into your heart when you're sitting with a patient, and you feel this call to ask them about something in particular that then fosters a line of conversation that is really revealing, or the person starts crying with the truth of what's just come up in the conversation. And obviously AIs can't do that. So in health, I hesitate to say it because I do struggle with it, but probably with diagnostics, it's probably going to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
But with health, I just think there's something so special when you sit with someone and converse or just be with them. And I think healing can come in through so many extraordinary avenues, and I just don't know if AI is part of that. So I just try to be open-minded and and consider that there's drawbacks and benefits to all of it. But I very much love that connection with the person. I think I've just seen too many benefits come from that.
Definitely. You then continue to write books and spread the message. Do I see a pattern there that basically you're in clinic, you see people, you see what they struggle with, you realize that you've done a lot of research to figure out certain issues, and they come up regularly, and therefore you create a resource for people to read, to reach more people, to help more people.
That's it.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. What are the other sort of topics? I want to talk about your last book as well as sort of the supplement range that is, attached to your name because you research and create it basically. But, when we start about sort of the other topics that you find, what are the other ones that became books because you could see how frequently it becomes an issue?
Rushing woman syndrome. So rushing as in hurry.
Yes.
So I wrote that in 2011.
Okay.
And I thought it was basically just a glitch in the matrix. I thought that everything had sped up and that it was all going to slow down again. So rushing woman syndrome is not a medical condition. It's just the name I gave a book. But the name I created it because of what I was observing in my patients. So prior to 2008, people were a lot more likely to arrive on time. This is all anecdotal. This is just my experience. They would arrive in a much calmer state. Their health pictures were they weren't as amplified unless there was something really dramatic, as in almost traumatic, going on for them. And then from about 2008-9 through to definitely sort of 2010, I was really seeing an amplification of patients would run late. And when I would inquire, that's fine. But they were stressed because they're like, well, we've only got an hour for the consultation and I've now missed the first 15 minutes sort of thing. So they were stressed about that. And it was just because they'd tried to cram a lot into the morning and then they left it too late to get a car park. So I just noticed this intensification of doing. And that was then translating into people starting to talk about stress. Prior to that, we talked about stress, but it was more, I've got a bit on or life is busy, but it started to become stress and period problems. I was very aware no one would see someone like me if they felt great. They're going to come and see someone like me if they're suffering in some way. So I see a biased group of the population. but everything was amplified. And so I noticed changes in digestion, periods, sleep. Sometimes it had gone as far as thyroid function disruption, but there was just this cluster of symptoms that I call, and I named it rushing woman syndrome, because it was just coming from this desire to be all things to all people. And so in rushing woman syndrome, in that book, I explain all the biochemistry and nutritional side of things, but in the emotional, more mindset exploration, what I explore is how the stress or the rushing, it comes from a really beautiful place. It comes from this deep caring for other people. So they want to make sure that others are okay or safe or warm or supported or appreciated or thought of. So it comes from this, really, really gorgeous place. But if you then peel the layer back on that, what is also true is that the rushing woman cares very much. They don't just care for others, they care what those other people think of them. So there's an exercise I do in another book that I wrote in 2019 called The Invisible Load. And there's an exercise in that where I help people to explore what I call their forehead words. So it's as if, I used to say to patients, it's as if you've got a word written across your forehead, and they are the traits, the behavioral traits that you want other people to see in you. And when I would say to a rushing woman, tell me how you need other people to see you, they'd say things like, I need them to see me as kind, thoughtful, selfless. Others would say, I want to be seen as competent, efficient, hardworking, dedicated. Other people would say things like, I want to be seen as playful, fun, the life of the party. It's very different how we want others to see us. And also, it's an interesting exercise to do with different people in your life. So you could do it and say, how do I need my wife to see me? Or how do I need my firstborn child to see me? Or how do I need my brother to see me versus my boss or this particular colleague? So it's a really fabulous and insightful exercise to do with key people in your life. And then the next time you're stressed, pause and consider, am I perceiving someone is seeing me in the opposite way to one of my forehead words? And most of the time the answer will be yes. And the reason that's helpful is, I think it's helpful, is it then changes how we communicate with that person. So if let's say you're running late for a meeting and you're sitting in traffic, I'm so stressed. If you just sit there and recite to yourself, I'm so stressed, I'm so late, you'll burst into that meeting with real intensity and it'll kind of disrupt the meeting a bit. But then I want people to consider how they will then operate, how they'll then behave for the rest of that day. Because what they've not acknowledged is that they're worried what their boss or their colleague thinks of them. That's why they're stressed about running late. So they will then unconsciously run themselves ragged that day, trying to prove to those people that they are a hard worker, that they are efficient, that they do value their job. So it'll be really intense. And they'll go home after a day like that and say, had a really stressful day today. No, it wasn't stressful. You made it that way through your thinking. Whereas if we walk into a meeting, if we do the work, so on the way there, running late for the meeting, I'm stressed. Ask the question, am I worried someone's going to see me in the opposite way? Do I want to be seen? Oh yeah, I can see it's my boss and this particular colleague. So then after the meeting, you might laugh at yourself and go, oh, it's all right. I know they think well of me. Or you grab them after the meeting and you say, hey, I'm so sorry I was late this morning. It's really important to me that you know that I value my job. All sorts of chaos broke out at home this morning, but I try to not let that impact my work. Please know I'm so grateful to have this job, and I'll try to not let what happens at home impact on me on my punctuality. What's the boss going to say? Oh, you're a terrible person. No, they'll be so grateful that you're expressing how much you care.
Yeah.
But then also it doesn't then translate into your day of, you don't have to prove to them that you are a hard worker because you've told them that you care and that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So do you see?
It's a great function. Like I would also do that like with my partner, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I find that, so out of rushing woman syndrome came that sort of concept, and then that merged into another, as I said, another book that I wrote in 2019 called The Invisible Load, which is to give people really practical solutions to what we currently call stress. Because I think it's very important to acknowledge that there's very real and genuine stress going on in the world. right now, and there's very real and genuine stress going on in people's lives, there is also a huge amount of stress we create for ourselves because of how we think, and that's the part we can change. So that's what I'm interested in, is things we can change. And so becoming aware of how we think is very helpful.
If I think about, I certainly noticed, you can ask, and like people say to me, yeah, you're so busy, and give me sort of like an excuse if I'm late or if I'm not contact someone as I would on the day. Well, you're really busy. And then normally my reply is like, look, we all busy. And I would say it doesn't matter whether you have a family, a job, or anything like that. I would say most people are busy, which seems to be a sort of a mark of this time of how that, how that turns out when you have all the information of the world in your hand, in your palm. That is pretty powerful, but it's also very distracting. And so I can see my mind, instead of being inquisitive, like, yeah, I wonder how that works. It's more, let me quickly figure out how this works, how that is, who that is. It's actually not really natural if you think about it. That's a device, a tool that enables you to constantly be on quite mentally, right? Always mentally. And I can see that there might be a difference with some people. Like I would say for myself, like running a company and quite a decent sized family, that feels like, yeah, I am really busy with really specific things. But there are many other people that might be not as focused on that, because they might, they might not have a passion that they follow, but they're just sort of like drifting, and they still would be as busy. In fact, I have some friends that are like that, like, don't judge them about that anyway. But the observation is really that they are in the same boat. They might not be as focused with their actions, but they're still busy. Everyone is busy, right? It's safe to say that, everyone could work on figuring out the mechanisms and to dehinge the flow-on effect of being rushed, right? So I'm thinking what you basically said was like apologizing for being late, and not instead using deeds to prove I'm still really loving being here and want my job or whatever. It's really, you either set the record clear and just move on as usual, or you don't say anything and then try to use your deeds to really show that. Complex.
But I also think that we label things as stress when they're not. So I think that we call a day, like if we ran late for the meeting and we just told ourselves we were stressed, and then we tried to prove how hardworking we are in a really intense kind of way, we went over and above, we will call a day like that stressful, when it's actually not. We've driven ourselves to behave like that to try to gain the approval of someone else. So much of our stress is the seeking of the approval of other people, whether we're aware of it or not.
And then there's also how it feels when you're stressed, which is like, it drives you away. It's much easier to get, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
That's
and
right.
It's sort of like in the same line, like they're already driven. So if you feel like, whoa, I have so many more tasks that I want to get through to today, and you have that drive anyway, you just make it a haste almost. I
think too, knowing our values is so helpful. And when I say values, I don't mean ethical preferences like kindness or generosity. I mean, what does your day demonstrate that you value? So what do you think about? What do you spend time on? What do you spend money on? So that the way someone lives will show me what they value. And if, we're all only going to have, we only have time, as you said at the start, time is a funny thing. There's only 24 hours available to all of us. And so what do we do with that? And we will take action on what we value. So part of what I try to do in my work is reconnect people to the wonder of their body. So how, if you could actually, and Harvard has done a really amazing animation that's accurate of the inner working of a cell. And I can't watch that animation without having tears stream down my face at the magnificence of it. So if you think that our physical structure is made up of about 50 trillion cells, and I get people to imagine a cell is like a circle, someone took a pencil and just drew a circle, that's a cell. And inside that cell, it's like a city that is operating. And there's 50 trillion of those inside you. And I also want people to pause and consider your conscious mind is not running that. It's not instructing that. And it gives me goosebumps. It's to be in awe. If we can, part of what I try and do in my work is reconnect people to the wonder, the magnificence of their physical structure, because I think we look after what we care about. And if that's true for the environment. It's, all the scaremongering is not very motivating for most people. You might get this disease, XYZ might happen. But you think about we look after our family because we care about them. If we live just a little bit more in touch with, you look into a flower and look at how it's made and the intricacy of it, you don't want to damage that. You don't want to hurt that in any way. So if the more in awe we live, I think the better we take care of everything, including our body. And so that's one of my avenues that I guess I feel it. So it's not inauthentic at all. Like I speak like that because that's how I feel. So, and we can't live like that all the time. But if we just lived a little bit more in awe of it all, I think we would make far more nutritious choices.
Yeah.
And be kinder to ourselves and others.
And I guess it comes down to really, what are we trying to achieve here? But,
yeah.
What's life really about?
Yeah.
I reflect on that and find it really conflicting as well. Is it like, is it being with your loved one? Surely. But then, success, do you need success? The means of living? Well, what type of life do you want? And, is the drive towards the life that you want maybe hindering being kind to yourself, to others? It's a real balance thing. And I often wonder whether people, back in the days, had it actually easier. It might be a harder life because, less resources were available. But when it comes to time and clarity of what's important, self-imposed or imposed externally could really help to say, actually, my life is really good. Feels like I struggled a little bit. Right?
I think it is at times, very much so.
Yeah.
But I do think that's where our values help to make it clearer so that there is, we can be pulled in 1,000 different directions right now and we can say yes to a million different things. But if we really value, and it doesn't matter what we value, that's uniquely for us as individuals, then that's what I feel that the sadness only comes when we haven't acted on what we value.
Yeah. Yeah. I found sometimes where I go a little bit against the grain is when I think about my kids, like we don't watch much. We don't have much what's called screen time, right? They don't have any electronic devices with screens, but every now and then we watch a movie and they've probably watched max 15 movies. However, they watch these movies quite often. And I'm actually the same. Maybe I should just talk about myself. Like I have 10 to 12 movies that I watch. So if I ever feel on a plane like watching a movie, I will not go to a new movie. I go to the same. And I remind myself, it's like, great, I have a choice. Like I don't need to catch up about all the new great movies that are out there because I know what I'm after. And that's like, I want to be told a story. I would enjoy the cinematography or whatever it might be. Yes. And so I just watch the same movie over and over again. And I try to find that also in my life in general. It's like, I don't need to go to a new restaurant, cafe all the time. If that's what I'm about, sure. But, if I actually like, I like what and anyway, so I try to take the drive out of it for more and more and more. It's like, well, I know how to enjoy this. Which is part of that too. It's like, I look forward to the scene to watch, right? Or that particular coffee to drink.
That's lovely.
Yeah. A question that came up was, what do you think happens to life expectancy? Do you think it will actually go up? At the moment in America, I think taking America, it's certainly going down. But then especially the scientific community says like, well, live another 10 years and you will be fine for another 50 years because there will be it seems I've heard this for longer than 10 years. Can you see the possibility to live a long, happy life longer than, what we see sort of looking back?
So the question for me is not so much about that. I think longevity will continue to be studied and there probably will be improvements. I might not use the word improvements. I imagine there will continue to be extensions. I know, as you said, America's going backwards at the moment, but what interests me way more is I think we live too short and die too long. So I'm way more interested in whatever time we do get our turn on Earth, I'm way more interested in the quality of that life while we're here. So thinking we have a health span, not just a lifespan, because I think a lot of people spend a long time dying. And so I'm forever thinking about what do we need for a robust physical structure so that we have great quality of life for as long as possible. So I want to be able to live independently my whole life. I want to die healthy. So, which I think some people think that's not possible, but my nana did, so I know it's possible. So what do we need for a functional body? We need energy. So I'm going to look after my energy, foster my energy. I think about energy. We need physical strength. You need muscles because you want to pick up children, grandchildren, carry groceries. I don't want anyone else getting my food for me. I want to do that because I don't want to carry it myself. We need flexibility. So you think I don't ever want to have someone come around to my house and put my shoes on for me. Like, it would do my head in. Like, I always want to be able to put my. So I need to maintain that flexibility with my movement to be able to do that. I love driving. I had to save up for my first car. I was 25 when I got my first car. So it's still so exciting to me that I have a car.
Yeah.
I'm too responsible to do this, but I just love the idea that I could just get in my car and drive wherever I want at any time.
Yeah, great.
So, but to keep my license, I need flexibility. So I think about all those things contributing to our health span. And so therefore that features or that fosters behind my choices, because I know if I get up to too much mischief, as a way of saying it, those things will start to be compromised. And then that might mean I've got to rely on others or that I'll lose functional capacity. So yeah, I think too many of us we live too short and die too long. Yeah. And I want to change that equation way more than I want to change how long we actually get to be here.
Gotcha. Yeah, health span. No, that makes a lot of sense. I found it's amazing to see people who have lost their health and what that does to how they take life, how they participate in life when they regain their health. For me, in a small one, I had an injury. Well, actually, sort of self-inflicted from a small appendix operation, became an intestine problem, and I took part of my intestine out. So I realized how fragile health can be, and that was a really difficult time because it was really painful, and I really realized whatever I ate created, either pain or not, so because there was a wound inside of me, and it really triggered for me to value health more, my physical health in particular, and I believe it's sort of like a catalyst for people. And what I wanted to just confirm is you probably have seen many people that were really not well and sort of had almost given up, or my wife sent me here, or my husband said I should come to you, but I don't think there's anything wrong with me, or there's nothing I can do, sort of dying while still alive. It's possible to come back, isn't it?
Yes.
There often are solutions to actually enjoy life again. And even though it's hard to perceive when you're really low, that you can get there. It's possible, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. But that mindset that it's possible is obviously the first and very important step.
Right.
So with cancer, I've seen a lot of people live very well with cancer. Some people, their drive is to go into remission. Obviously, that's all very dependent on the cancers, but it's I know a lot of people who live very well with certain cancers, not aggressive cancers, obviously, but it's also then if someone has, it might be a really debilitating digestive system problem and they feel like they can't leave the house, or it's the pain is a lot. It's helping someone to be curious, or to, instead of seeing that that's happening to them, I gently would explore with someone, what if it's happening for you? What could this be about? If what's the gift in this, or what are the gifts in this? And if you start to explore that, extraordinary things can come to the surface, and not what you might think, so that someone might say, oh, I need to eat more nutritiously. Okay. But also part of healing is recognizing, I think, too, the benefits you get from the suffering, because a lot of people have made benefits they get from suffering, they're very unaware of them. So it might mean that they get more attention. It might mean they get more help. They might, it might be an older person and their child moves home or moves back to the same town as them, and that was silently what they wanted, but they didn't use their words and ask for that. They got sick as a way of calling the child home. I'm making all of this up, but just giving examples.
Too, actually, yeah.
And so so understanding our conscious and unconscious drivers, that's also part of healing, I think, because while ever we unconsciously or consciously perceive more benefits than drawbacks from something that on the surface looks really difficult for someone, we might stay unwell. So I love exploring that, helping people to explore that, as well as their nutrition, their sunlight, their sleep, all those physical things we need for great health. But healing is absolutely possible. I see the body as this most extraordinary vehicle of communication, and it initially whispers to us with changes it would like to encourage us to make in all sorts of arenas. And we sometimes don't want the message. We don't want to hear it. And then eventually I think it will roar at us to let us know that a bit of recalibration is needed, whether it's with what we eat, drink, move, think, breathe, believe, or perceive, or it might be a number of those areas. But it's really, if you're open to the learning in that healing process, it will often change the entire course of your life if you tune into that. And that's the crazy gift of it.
Incredible.
That's my take anyway.
Sounds like a crazy ride. No, I agree on that for sure. Yeah. And so then you, going back to your sort of like your book. So you had the crazy rushing woman syndrome.
Yes.
And then did you have a gap then?
No, I wrote 1 or 2 books every year for many years.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, that was the last time I wrote a book until now. So I had 5 years.
Gotcha.
For
break?
Well, I was researching things, trying to develop some new things.
Yeah.
And all of that I had a few false starts with some things I was trying to develop.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a bit of a break in production. So, but we're back.
Good things take time sometimes, yeah.
Sebastian, they do. Thank you for saying that.
So, which takes us to your last book. What's the title of that one?
So my new book is called Fix Iron First, the one thing that changes everything.
Is that right?
Yeah. And that's because iron is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world.
Is it?
Yeah. By far.
By far. Oh, I thought it was magnesium or something like that.
No, it's iron by far. And it's very common in women across the menstruation years, pregnant women, athletes. It's also really common now, unfortunately, in teenage girls, and infants and toddlers. So part of it is we actually require a lot of iron every day. So for women across the menstruation years, you need 18 milligrams per day just to prevent deficiency, and that's a lot. That's over half a kilo of beef, just to put it in context.
Per day.
And not suggesting people do that, but I'm just putting it in context to show you how much iron is required for a menstruating female every day. And very few women eat enough iron-rich foods these days. You can do it through food, but we need to be very focused on it, and that's why supplementation is often needed. But beyond that, so if we eat in a vegan or vegetarian way, we multiply the RDI, the recommended dietary intake, you multiply that by 1.8 for the poorer absorption, unfortunately, from those plant foods. And also there's more inhibitors, iron absorption inhibitors in all of our plant-based foods. So we need more. So a menstruating female needs 32.4 milligrams of iron to prevent deficiency if we eat a vegan or vegetarian vegan or vegetarian way. So it's very difficult to eat enough, and it's why supplementation is not always, but almost always required. Men need less. Obviously, adult men only need 8 milligrams of iron per day. That increases if they're exercising fairly intensely. So they're either an athlete or they're training like they're an athlete, because we lose iron in our perspiration, and also particularly for runners, long distance runners, there are a couple of additional things that actually happen. Heel strike hemolysis, where our red blood cells break open. Also some irritation that can happen in the bladder or the gut that can lead to a little bit of blood loss. So iron requirements for athletes are also increased. So yeah, but more than that, it was it's a deficiency that a lot of people just live with because it's really common. And so they think, oh, well, my friend's iron deficient, so surely it, isn't everybody, kind of thing. So they don't do anything about it.
Oh.
But we need iron for not just energy and oxygen delivery through the body. You literally cannot make thyroid hormones without iron. So an underactive thyroid and iron deficiency often go hand in hand. We also need iron for our mood. So iron is crucial to the production of dopamine, which we need for motivation. We need iron to produce GABA, which is a very calming neurotransmitter.
Oh, yes.
And also serotonin, which is important for contentment. So we don't sleep as well when we're iron deficient either. It's very much connected to restless legs. and even teeth grinding at night. And this is a big conversation that's probably, its own session, but I'll just touch on it now.
Yeah.
So anxiety can be a symptom of something else. Right now in our culture, when someone says they are anxious or they have anxiety, our culture is very quick to label that as a psychiatric condition. And a study was actually published in 2023 showing the physical manifestations of iron deficiency anemia, and anxiety is actually a symptom of iron deficiency. So not its own condition, it's a symptom. So I feel that we need to broaden the conversation that we're having around anxiety at the moment to understand that it could be, it's not for everybody, but it could be iron deficiency for some people. And that's particularly common in teenagers. So particularly for teenage girls, because when they start to menstruate, their requirements increase. And it's often at a time where they have a tendency to restrict food in some way. And it's hard enough to get enough iron going in when you eat for satiation and you eat in a really robust kind of way. It's impossible to get enough iron going in if you're picky or you restrict food groups or you skip meals. So it's very, very common in teenage girls. And I want to shout that from the rooftops that anxiety can be a symptom of iron deficiency for us at any age, but particularly for teenage girls. So that's why I wrote the book, because I feel that it's under-recognized and under-treated, and I want to bring awareness to that. I'm on a real mission around it, to be honest, Sebastian.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think like quality of life has a lot to do with feeling purpose, right? So, I can see that really fuels your happiness, probably like being on par, like, because I can see I can make a difference to humanity, right? Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's the goal. That's the plan.
Limited understanding of my iron, or about iron, is, do we need vitamin C to absorb it?
So with the iron, there's different forms. When it's non-heme iron, which is the form of iron that's in our plant foods, then yes, you need vitamin C to be able to absorb that.
So when you say plant foods, so meat needs vitamin C? No, it's just when it comes from foods, you don't need vitamin C.
When it comes from animal foods, you don't need the vitamin C to help the absorption. But to get iron out of spinach, for example, you need vitamin C.
And what about supplements? I guess it depends on where it's derived from.
Yes, very much so, which is why I have spent 8 years trying to develop an iron supplement that actually works.
Which has been released? You have released it?
So, yes.
Ah, cool.
Yes. So BioBlends is my supplement company, and the difference with BioBlends is everything is made from food. So the BioBlend supplements are not made from synthetic ingredients like most supplements. We source everything from food. So the iron is in a form that has a unique absorption mechanism. It's called ferritin iron, and it's from organic peas. So I'm really, really thrilled because its mechanism of absorption overcomes a lot of the usual absorption hurdles. And the clinical trials that have been done and published with ferritin iron from organic peas is absolutely mind-blowing. And it does the ferritin iron from the peas doesn't have all the usual gut-related consequences. So constipation is a very common symptom, side effect, from most iron supplements. And it doesn't have that. It's because it's from the organic peas, and it doesn't irritate the cells that line the gut because it's absorbed intact. So, it's the other thing too, we've paired it with all of the cofactor nutrients that are needed for the iron to be able to go to work once it's inside of us. So copper is really crucial to the iron being able to be delivered to the bone marrow, being delivered to all the crucial jobs that the iron is needed for. So every single second we make 2.5 million new red blood cells.
Whoa.
Every second, 2.5 million new red blood cells. And we need iron for all of them. And so we need the copper to be able to deliver the iron back to what's called the total body iron pool so that it can supply the iron going into those red blood cells and it going to the thyroid and it going to the brain, all the places that the iron needs to go to do all of its crucial jobs. So copper's tied up in that. So we've included sesame seeds in there because they're a source of copper. We also need beta-carotene and vitamin A, so there's carrot in there as well. And acerola and vitamin C. We don't need it for absorption of the ferritin iron, but it's just such a beautiful protective antioxidant nutrient that's in there, and then also kiwi fruit for its anti-inflammatory and prebiotic capacities. So it's completely unique and exclusively available from BioBlends, and it's been many, many years in the making, but I'm very, very rapt that it's to offer it to people.
You really thought that through.
Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps it took too long, but that's okay. We're here now. So as you say, good things take time.
I can see the sort of parallel to how we build our saunas, right? Because there's really like the intent is behind to heal, and there are certain pitfalls that you can fall into either because you don't know or because it becomes more expensive doing that. When we talk about expensive, and I saw you a couple of days ago, and we were talking about supplements and how that can go really, really wrong. I love supplements. I've taken all sorts of different things. The easiest way for me to feel good about my supplement is really knowing who has made it, understanding their philosophy and their integrity. I was blown away when you were telling me about sort of how different supplements and their ingredients are and how much they cost. And I mean, if you want to give it a guess of how many supplements there are out there that say the right thing, but it wasn't checked about, like, can you even absorb this type? It sounds like it's the right thing to take. Like, it's a problem.
It's a big problem. And often a company will spend more on marketing than they do on research and development. So that they have no way of knowing if it's actually going to make a difference once it's inside someone to their blood test. We actually BioBlends did a trial a few years ago. This is one of the reasons why it all took so long. I won't name the food, but we took a plant-based food that is supposedly a good source of iron and paired it with vitamin C, and we trialed it in 20 women who had low ferritin. Ferritin is a storage form of iron, and none of them improved. 2 of them stayed the same, but the rest got worse. So I can't put my name to that. I am so concerned that that's out there on the market, and because in my experience with those 20 women in that trial, it literally didn't make a difference. So even though something might say it contains something, it doesn't always translate into it making a difference for your body. I think it'll show up in your blood tests. It also, I think we feel better when we take things that have got a lot of active ingredients or the right amount of nutrients for us. More is not always better too, I need to add.
Okay.
Because obviously we're obtaining certain things through what we're eating. Like you, I love supplements, but I want to know what's behind any brand I take.
Yeah.
And I know with my own company, we have the highest standards. I am painful to work with when it comes to what I will or won't allow, and it's why everything takes so long. But yeah, the quality's there.
Yeah. And the quality means that the cost for the ingredients is not lower than actually the packaging, which some of the big brands out there, they have that ratio, so it's a fancy bottle, or not even. It's just that the ingredients are so cheap, and they say the same thing, but you don't know where they're coming from, how they have been treated, or whether they are bioavailable at all. Huh?
That's right, spot on.
Oh, terrible.
It's a worry. It's a worry.
Hey, just to understand why this is an issue nowadays with the iron. So did we used to have a different diet? Were the soils different, and therefore didn't deliver, the plants actually have no way to create as much iron anymore, or the meat or something? Or is it something completely different?
So we ate nose to tail originally. So if we would hunt and gather, and if we ate animal foods, you would eat the entire beast. And so a wide variety. So the liver, for example, all the offal meats are very rich in iron. So there was a decent amount of that in all those offal meats when we would eat in that way.
Okay.
Also, stress can be a really big disruptor to iron absorption. So good stomach acid production is critical to iron absorption, and our stomach acid production can be compromised when we live on adrenaline. So if we think historically, we only made adrenaline when our life was in danger. So we would cruise along with no adrenaline or very low adrenaline, maybe a little bit there for awareness. But then if someone from another tribe jumped out of the jungle at us with their spear, we go, and we make adrenaline and it spikes. And then as soon as the threat has gone or we've run away, the adrenaline goes back to baseline, and we'd cruise along for another 3 days or 3 weeks with low adrenaline. Whereas now we make adrenaline because we think about what we need to get done that day, kind of a to-do list. We're worrying about a conversation we had yesterday. everyone needs to block their ears. Caffeine leads the human body to make adrenaline. So I'll tell you actually, so there's so much that leads us to make adrenaline. Most of it's psychological, though these days it's not. We are thankfully relatively safe. But the difference is we don't spike adrenaline now. We just incrementally increase it across the day. And that's not just a one-off day. We live like that each day. So our stomach acid production can be compromised, and that can compromise iron absorption as well. And then, of course, we have lots of fake food. So for me, there's no such thing as junk food. There's just junk and there's food. And as humans, we're supposed to eat food, but the junk has infiltrated our daily life. When I was growing up, we had junk at birthday parties, whereas now it's in everyone's cupboard, and we have it. Most people have it every day, and it's what we do every day that impacts on our health. It's not what we do occasionally. So I think there are two things that have had a big impact on what's happening with our iron. I don't know. I actually haven't read research, and it might not have even been done, whether, for example, menstrual cycles have become heavier. I don't know, but that might be the case as well through many, many mechanisms that can happen. But I haven't looked into that. But that's a possibility as well. But certainly stress and certainly a move away from that nose to tail kind of eating, I think, has certainly contributed.
So creating a less stressful world would really help, huh?
It would. Do you know, I think about children as well, Sebastian, and I think that there are, because children, if they're iron deficient, their growth and development and their cognitive function can be compromised. And there are children growing up in households where they, are in very loving homes with very attentive parents, and often the parents won't know that, let's say, their youngest child might be iron deficient. And I want to change that conversation so that we all know what the symptoms are. And then there are children who come from really hard places. They're not going to get breakfast before they go to school. Those kids are going to be iron deficient, and that's going to be affecting their learning and their cognitive development. And then, of course, there are children in developing countries who don't even have access to iron-rich foods. So, yeah, I'm on a real mission to elevate this conversation back to the top of the pile where it needs to be, to resolve it globally, because it's unacceptable to me that it's the number one nutritional deficiency when we know so much about it and we have so many ways we can resolve it. And its impact is so detrimental long term when we just live with it, when we just put up with it. So it's time to, I'm trying to elevate that conversation and give people solutions.
Why did we stop eating offals and the whole animal? Is it a cost thing, that it's harder to prepare or something?
It's a good question. I haven't actually looked into why we moved away from that. There'll be others better equipped to answer that. I've not looked into, why our preferences altered. I could only begin to guess, but it's possibly, been a contributing factor.
Something like that, right? Like sometimes you're driven sort of, but I guess by price, and maybe also, well, if you think about it, if we would have beasts at home, like, animals at home that we slaughter, and if we don't have the means to only eat a little bit and just throw the rest away, but actually need to make it all, count. Could be a way to do that too. My grand certainly grew up that way. It's just, what do you do? Maybe also to honor the animal in a sense. Is like,
that's right. That's right. I think, and I think there is there's certainly a move back towards that nose to tail eating, and certainly in some areas the honoring of it, and the having gratitude that you've been provided that. So we definitely
we try to buy, it's called a half a cow or something like that, and it comes with everything, and there's a lot of freedom also to say, make a sausage not only with meat but offals in it and so on. There's certainly ways to do it.
There is.
Yes. You were saying that most of iron deficiency is more psychological or, stress related, that type of thing. Sorry, I paraphrased probably too general here. But how does sleep, which is a massive topic, of course, with it in itself, is that also part of it? Having not a good sleep, I guess it would add to stress then, huh?
Well, it can add to stress, absolutely. And sleep affects everything. We know that it changes food choices. We know it changes appetite and hunger signals. So yeah, it's such a foundation to good health. I always will say to someone when they're not sleeping well, again, it's feedback. And when we've lost the ability to do something so fundamental to our survival, if that's not some feedback, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good to get to the heart of why we might not be. And I know that's easier said than done. I know a lot of people don't sleep well and they pursue answers to it and don't necessarily get those answers. But I always say to them, keep going. Really try to get a solution for it, find out what it is actually about, and address that. But as far as sleep and iron deficiency goes, there's not really a direct link. It's indirect, as you say, through stress, and it would probably also affect food choices. You could think that when we're really tired, it impacts our food choices because you think, I'll just get takeaway, I'm too tired to cook. And then you think, I'm too tired to go for a walk, so I'll just sit on the couch. And so I think the ripple effect of lousy sleep is pretty major on a lot of our choices and our thoughts, of course, as well. Yeah. But it's a big deal. Do you find people in your business struggle with sleep or they're...
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And I have quite a few anecdotal, I remember a customer that would say, I haven't, actually, this is one of the things we used to hear, well, me, when I was more closer to the sales team, we've quite a sized team now, so I don't hear it as much, but it's the first feedback is normally I've not slept for a long time like that after using a sauna. And it doesn't necessarily mean that these people do it at night. Like I'm someone who I'm awake after a sauna, so that's something that I do early in the day. But there's certainly that feedback, like I've slept really well, and there are multiple reasons for that. But yeah, no, it's certainly something. And sleep is the number one. I mean, to me, it changes my personality. If I don't get enough sleep, if the 1-year-old decides to just wake up more than normal, and that's normally my job in our household, to be with the little kids and help them to figure out how to sleep. I found it fascinating, by the way. It's a small side comment, but I'm pretty intuitive and I'm really observant with children at night because it's just one of those things I found fascinating. And there is a willingness to sleep. There is a willingness to sleep, and just figuring out, what do you need so that you can sleep? Like, do you need to, just be petted a little bit? And after a while, they give themselves the rhythm, but they often lack just a little bit of rhythm, and you just, do that. And other times you move that, or you have to teach them. Look, crying means I don't pick you up. This is controversial, and like there are many other ways you can do it. But like for us, it's like, okay, at the moment where the child stops crying, you pick it up, so it realizes, there's no connection between me crying and then coming. It's more the opposite. And when they don't cry, they don't become as stressed, which means they actually might fall asleep themselves. So I found it fascinating. I'm a Scorpio, and I think they're really into psychology, so I certainly enjoy that. But at the same time, talking about sleep, not getting enough hours is terrible. And I'm like, oh man, let me not go to the office. Let me work at home, because I'm not the greatest person to be around them.
But aren't you just so beautiful to consider that individual, that little human, and what their body might be needing to help them seek that sleep? I've not heard that said before. That's just such a beautiful approach.
So this is a topic that makes me teary, because the saying of, if the parents don't want the success and the best well-being for their children,
that's maybe a big driver for you. Look at you. You should see his eyes.
No, it's true. It's
really beautiful.
Yeah,
I can feel that in you.
Because when you, like, every now and then you might strike gold with the teacher later on, that really cares for you. And then that's wonderful. Or the kind neighbor that just somehow maybe, just really fond of you. And that's true. But the given should be the parent. And it's a big job. It's, I think, for parents as well, because there's so much, danger out there, or perceived danger for your future. You have to do this. And it's, I found it really complex. And talking about eating now and back in the days, it's the same thing, right? There were more rules around it. There were more customs that were just like, of course we do it this way. And now we're in a time where anything goes, really. Like, we're so attached to our history and how we used to do that. And it does not always help, because there was a good reason.
That's right.
Maybe not possible to scientifically prove, but for whatever reason, you did this always together. You ate always this together.
Yeah.
And I bet you, if you go back and read the news and say, like, this is absolutely silly. You don't have to have, so iron, for example, why would you have lemon with spinach? There's a saying, this is really good for you. And it took us to develop tests to show like, oh, the absorption of iron from spinach is actually not happening. But that was in the 90s, and for 40 years we didn't do it, and the custom is gone. Yeah. Whatever it might be,
Yes, that's such a great example too.
Right. And I'm sure there are many more. And I think we disregarded a little bit of what we had established over the thousands of years that we've been around. Yeah.
Including putting children in touch with how to soothe themselves. I will take that with me. That was very, very beautiful.
Oh, okay.
The way you described that.
Yeah. And I think behind closed doors, in a sense, there are many parents that, well, I certainly have that thought also, like, if people would know what we put in, because every parent is concerned, they just don't know what to focus on. This is a strong suit of mine, and I have others where I'm not so strong, right? So we're all different. This has been really good. I think I could spend the whole day with you.
Non-stop chatter.
Yeah. It's amazing the knowledge you have. I had some other really specific sort of questions also about your sort of supplement brand. So I assume that most or all of your products have been researched deeply and have been also checked on bioavailability and so on, right?
Yes, they have.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, and all of them.
Right. And I heard you that they're not synthetic. They're food driven.
Yes.
Can you explain to me the difference? Because I'm not a chemist, so I wouldn't even know, how do you make up stuff in a lab versus like bringing it from, like distilling it from, like if I think about peas, you somehow mush them and somehow pull the iron out, right?
There's a way with the organic peas to get the ferritin iron out. There's a very specific concentration and extraction mechanism so that it's then concentrated into a powder that we then put into the supplement. So if you eat a bowl of peas, you're not going to get you'll get a tiny bit, but it won't be clinically significant. So we've actually found a way to, our partners, our research partners have found a way to actually concentrate the ferritin iron and extract it. So, and the same with the copper's just naturally present in sesame seeds, and there's a way of obtaining the copper from the sesame seeds. So it's in a form that the body recognizes. It's in BioBlends contains foods that, the broccoli is actual broccoli that's been concentrated for the really active ingredients that do all sorts of good things inside of us. So instead of eating 20 heads of broccoli, it concentrates those particular active ingredients. So glucoraphanin, for example, gets activated by gut bacteria that produce an enzyme called myrosinase, and the glucoraphanin gets converted into a thing called sulforaphane that occurs in broccoli and broccoli sprouts. And that has really robust research behind it for really healthy estrogen metabolism, and upregulating what's called phase 2 liver detoxification pathways. So that's the sort of level of research we go to, and we only obtain those ingredients, those substances, from food. Whereas most supplements, our zinc is from guava leaves, whereas most zinc is just made in a laboratory synthetically and popped into a bottle and sold. And some will be more bioavailable than others, but some will be pointless, for example. And also the absorption of zinc, just focusing on zinc for a second, is interfered with by all sorts of other substances. So just for people listening, a zinc supplement is actually better taken just before bed, away from everything else. So fiber, for example, disrupts zinc absorption. Anyway, so with BioBlends, all of the products can only contain food or medicinal herbs. And also I want you to imagine that I don't tablet, because there's all sorts of rubbish, to use a very general term, required to make a tablet out of something. So that's why I only use powders, and then we pop them into veggie capsules. And the encapsulation process, so if you imagine there's 5 ingredients in the iron product, and it gets mixed together, and it's all got to be perfect because every capsule needs to contain the same amount, and that has to be tested. So that's all got to be mixed perfectly and then encapsulated. And some ingredients, not in iron, but in some of the other products that BioBlends makes, some of them are very sticky. They're just, in nature, they're sticky. And so conventional companies will usually add what are called flow agents to the machinery. Yeah. And they're all synthetic. We don't even allow that. But organic rice husks have that same sort of drying property. And so we use that. So even if we try not to have to do that, but if it's sticky and we have to add a little bit of that, we will do that for the flow, but even that's from food. So that's how painful I am. But that's the lengths we've gone to make sure that we're giving the body everything that it recognizes.
Yeah. Look, this podcast is really not about saunas, red light, and ice baths. This is not about this podcast exists. It exists because I feel for myself a gap of shining the light on things that I really, really love and that I believe the people that around our company should know to also improve their life. So I reckon, if you don't mind, could we just go through your supplements and just like the top 3 things that they accomplish? Because to me, it's like, that's important. Like, like you have amazing supplements that have the intent behind it to really make a difference to people's health and lives. So we might as well actually like explain it so that we are more inclined to actually take them. Do you mind? I
mean, it's very generous. It's so generous.
No, so
Thank you.
Yeah, but it comes really it comes from a point of view of like, well, that would help because if I know you have something that really addresses something that I have, I'm more likely to go to the BioBlend website and actually, look it up. So if you don't mind, is that possible? Do you remember them?
Of course. I live and breathe it every day.
Okay, there. I thought so. Yeah.
So Organic Daily Greens and Radiant Reds is actually a powder. And it was the very first product BioBlend's made.
It's delicious, by the way. I like it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I used to make it in my kitchen for myself before BioBlends existed because I was obsessed with getting enough vegetables and I traveled a lot for work. I still do a bit, but back then I used to travel a huge amount. And so I used to make this out of the base ingredients and take it with me. And so then when we started BioBlends, it was the first product I wanted to make so that others could have it and I could have it in a really easy to travel sort of way. And so the ingredients, so there's the really special broccoli extract is in that. There's also dandelion leaves, which is very good for example, fluid retention and kidney function. It's also very high in chlorophyll. Then there's the grasses, wheatgrass and barley grass, again, full of minerals and very high in chlorophyll. And then there's beetroot, which contains all sorts of things, but including nitric oxide and whole New Zealand black currants, so including the seed. And New Zealand black currants are little superstars in so many of their health attributes. So that's the combination. It's supposed to be a little bit bitter on the taste buds, and that's because when we consume bitter foods, it is actually very, very good for many aspects of our digestion, including bile production. So the liver produces bile and it then gets stored in the gallbladder. And bitterness is a taste base that we've moved away from as humans, obviously in favor of sweetness. And so our tolerance for bitter things, even broccoli today that you buy at the market, is not as bitter as it was even 10 years ago. There's a real drop in the bitterness factor in a lot of our foods.
Wow.
And that is not good for us. Our bitter receptors, again, there's so many really cool tangents. So bear with me on this one.
Yep.
So when there's lots of things in nature that have a bitter taste base that are poisonous to us.
Okay.
But a green vegetable, like broccoli or spinach or cabbage, they all have bitter taste bases, but they're not poisonous. They contain nutrients that we can utilize and we require and benefit from. So when we consume something that has bitterness, a message is instantly sent to the liver to produce bile in case the thing that we're receiving is poisonous. So all our detoxification mechanisms are upregulated when we consume bitter things in preparation in case a poison arrives. But then when it's broccoli or cabbage or spinach, even though some children might say they're poisonous, but they're not. But when we consume those foods, they enhance detoxification processes because of that beautiful bitterness. So the Organic Daily Greens and Radiant Reds is not supposed to be sickly sweet. It's why we don't add anything else to it. It is just those foods in those beautiful concentrated forms, and a teaspoon a day mixed into water or added to a smoothie is all you need. And the feedback, and I don't say this lightly, I also don't take it lightly when people write to us, the difference in people's energy is remarkable. It's very good as well for sugar cravings. So if you feel that you want sugar mid-afternoon and you're trying to change that pattern of behavior, then it's great. It's a great drink to have at that point. So it's a absolute superstar.
Just really quickly, in terms of the water, can the water be warm?
can be warm, but definitely not hot.
Okay.
Yeah, so the powder is actually quite rich in vitamin C, and heat destroys vitamin C.
Okay.
So you just wouldn't get as much vitamin C.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry.
So no, it's a great question. So then there's another product called Liver Love, and Liver Love contains the broccoli as well, and then a range of other botanicals, so things like turmeric, globe artichoke, gentian, St. Mary's thistle. So it was designed to upregulate those detoxification pathways, but also protect the liver from exposure to pollutants, because sadly these days we're exposed to all sorts of pollutants through what we eat and drink. Alcohol, for example, damages liver cells. The liver has a really incredible capacity to heal, though, more than any other organ inside of us. So yeah, Liver Love it's been designed to help those detox pathways, to also help with prevent that liver fat accumulation, which has become so common. Unfortunately, a lot of adults now have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the liver is the primary place where hormones get detoxified. All that means is, I'll pick on estrogen as the example. When men and women both make estrogen, women make more, obviously. But when your body has finished with estrogen, it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't evaporate. It has to be detoxified, i.e. its structure has to be altered before we can then incorporate it into our urine or our fecal matter to get rid of it. So things like Liver Love are designed to help support those detoxification pathways. So yeah, they're two that people write to us a lot about. There's Cycle Essentials that helps with if people have really big challenges with their menstrual cycle, or we get very good feedback from women with polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's another product called Meno Ease. So that's designed for women once their periods have ceased and they might be experiencing heat or sleeplessness. Yeah. Then there's also Calm Restore. So you can use it during the day if you feel sort of hopped up and full of adrenaline, but other people use it to help them sleep. It's very good at soothing the nervous system and for a busy kind of mind.
What's in there?
In Calm Restore. So that's ziziphus, magnolia, lemon balm, chamomile, and withania.
Oh, wow.
So that combination, it's not drowsy, but it's very calming, hence the name. Yeah, and as I said, very soothing for the nervous system. Yeah. And then there's a product called Skin Nutrition, and that uses grapeseed extract and a unique little combination of foods. So the grapeseed extract, and then there's a very powerful enzyme called superoxide dismutase, which is a big, long, crazy word, and it's from melon. And it's a really potent antioxidant that's got really good research behind it, particularly for skin. But with that product, Skin Nutrition, I could have called it blood glucose regulation. I could have called it insulin support, because and that's the beauty of good quality botanicals that are really high in active ingredients. They do all sorts of things. There's not just one mechanism that they support inside of us. There's many. So the Skin Nutrition product, sometimes people write to us and say things like, I have type 2 diabetes and my glucose has dropped. Could it be that? And it will be. It's just called Skin Nutrition because it's got really good research behind it for improvements in reducing redness and acne and rosacea and that type of thing. So nature is truly extraordinary. And then there's zinc. That I said is made from guava leaves, and then our new product is our iron product. So it's a fairly small range, but we take a long time to develop them, and we put a lot of research into testing them to make sure they make a difference. So
beautiful.
Thank you for asking me about it.
Yeah, of course. Well, there's also some interest on my side, so I definitely will start using more of your products. But I like the green reds. Is it called? Yeah,
organic daily greens and reds.
Yeah, no, it is delicious. It really is delicious. I've only started, so I don't know sort of like the effects. We'll see. Look, well, I'm sure they will. I have some more general questions about sort of like getting to know you a little bit. But just really quickly, anyone can take BioBlends?
Yes, anyone.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I want to find it, it's bioblends.com.au or .com or?
It's just bioblends.com.
Great.
So it's actually where our warehouse, we manufacture in New Zealand and ship from New Zealand. And yes, we source the vast majority of our ingredients from New Zealand. The only time we go outside New Zealand is if we can't actually obtain the ingredient from locally within New Zealand. So we seek that first and foremost. So it's
That's very cool.
It is. It's wonderful. But yeah, bioblends.com is the website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we can find your books on a different website probably.
So that's at drlibby.com.
Mm-hmm.
And my books and my educational online courses are all there.
You got courses as well.
Yes.
What type of courses do you have?
So there's Weight Loss Redefined. That brings to life the themes that we spoke about in Accidentally Overweight, like how to address insulin resistance, how to better support thyroid function, with a focus to supporting your body to use body fat more effectively as a fuel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Detox by Dr. Libby, which is a 28-day guided, supported course. There's Shake Off Sugar to help people break a habit with sugar. And then there's some other shorter sort of educational courses or seminars, if you like. So
that's cool.
Yeah, they're all on the
well
website.
Done. Yeah, gee, it's a life work already. And I'm sure you have another...
A bit more to go.
Yeah, that's right.
Mostly about iron, though.
There you go. Hey, some really sort of generic, not medical questions about you. It's like, what do you think? Like, what was maybe the best advice you ever received from someone?
Don't worry about something until it's a problem. My mum could see when I was little that I was a real worrier.
Uh-huh.
And I remember very clearly her saying that to me, and I try very hard to remember to apply that in my life, because obviously we can all think about potential things that might happen down the track, and most of them don't actually happen, and we miss this moment if we're thinking about, or what if that happens?
Yeah.
So I try to allow things to just unfold, and I'll deal with it when it unfolds. But that's been a lifelong mental retraining in my mind.
Yeah.
And I recite it to myself over and over.
Yeah. I think Tolkien said something similar, where he says, so many terrible things have happened to me, most of them never actually manifested. Yeah. And it's sort of like your mind feels not so good.
I love that. Yes, that's it. Not so good.
Not so good. If you could have a daily green or a coffee with someone, dead or alive, who would you hang out with? Who would you have a conversation with?
Oh, well, firstly, the person I would invite to coffee is my mum. She's 81 and a life enthusiast. And so the reason I would pick my mum is, even though I have spent a lot of time with my mum, obviously, is because you ask her to coffee, it's like you've just given her $1 million. So she is illuminated at the invitation. So that, witnessing that, and her excitement to go out for coffee is why I would pick her. There would be other people, probably some scientific minds that I would, think of getting. We used to play this game at uni, who would you invite to a dinner party kind of thing, and you'd pick your 8 people who would come to the dinner party, and part of it was the people you wanted to have conversations with, but it was also to see them interact. That was always a fun game we played at uni. Okay. But yeah, inviting them to coffee would be my mum.
What were the most influential books that you have read?
A big one was Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. So when I was doing my PhD, one of my professors gave me that. So 1999, I read that. And what came through for me in that was her deep, deep care and appreciation of nature. It is that I feel that informed her writing hugely. And that really spoke to me, and really spoke to, I guess, that concept that would have been very young and very immature in me at the time of, we look after what we care about. And of course, she wrote about pesticides, and I won't be able to quote it word for word, but her quote, one of her famous quotes from that book goes along the lines of, if we're going to live so closely with these substances and eat them and drink them and literally take them into the marrow of our bones, we better understand how they work. And we don't. And it's the very tip of the iceberg right now in our understanding of how so many of them work and what they do. And, one of the ways we learnt about the concerning aspects of DDT was in the top of the food chain, birds like the eagles, the shells of they'd lay the eggs to hatch their babies, and the shells were too thin that the babies wouldn't survive. And so the bird numbers were dropping, and because they were eating they were eating the carrion, the animals that had died, as their food source, and those animals had eaten other animals, and they'd eaten the grass, and so that's how the exposure came to be. And we don't learn for such a long time until there are dire consequences, like a drop in those bird numbers. We don't learn about the consequences of some of these things. So her book had a profound impact on the way that I think, in that, you hear there's more knowledge around now, but back certainly in the 90s, people would say to me, but it's in the supermarket, so it must be safe, or it's the council workers use it to spray everywhere, so it must be safe. And I just used to say, well, I don't know. We don't know yet. That's all too new for us to really know. So, and it's funny, isn't it? It sort of really speaks to my own drive, I guess, to support farmers who grow their own food. If farmers stop caring, the world will fall apart. If farmers stop caring about the soil, if farmers stop caring about understanding some of what we're talking about, it really does fall apart, because when nutrients only get into food because it's in the soil, and we are often in conventional farming, only a couple of nutrients are fertilized back into the soil, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. There's at least 10 or 12, even more, missing if that's all we're putting back.
Yeah.
And then pesticides get used because the plants are weak, because they don't have the nutrition, and on the cycle goes. And then we consume all of that low nutrition and the pesticides. And it's kind of this cocktail that I don't think we fully understand yet. So Rachel Carson's book that I read in 1999 really fostered my thinking around that whole big picture.
Yeah. It's sort of like a heavy message that comes through that one, I found.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. But without that awareness, with her heaviness comes her awe, which I'm obsessed with.
Right.
For it all, and wanting to look after it and protect it.
Got it. How do you start your day? I mean, a regular day, if there's such thing.
Sebastian, I used to have all sorts of rules for myself, and someone once said to me, you live like you're a sick person, like you're this really healthy person, but you live like, and this was a long time ago, but it spoke to the fear that they were perceiving in me about where my choices were coming from. Because I think we can make choices from a place of, I want to look after myself, I'm in awe of life, versus I'm frightened of developing that disease or whatever. And so that statement, my partner at the time, my partner said it to me, I just want to challenge you. You kind of live like you're a sick person. And that was in my 20s.
Ooh.
And at first I paused and considered it and thought, no, I don't think so. And it took about 3 weeks of it really getting under my skin. And I thought, that is so true. So I started to let go of this structure that I had for myself about, you did this at this time and then you followed it with this and it had to be this. And I had no flexibility with that. So I think it's the way I look at it now is it's really great. I like having standards rather than rules. Mm-hmm. That's healthier for me. I know others are different. Others like rules. They do better with that. I like having, I in my mind, I think that's just a standard I have. So to answer your question, I'm really fortunate where I live. I have rainwater. So I have a great big glass of water. I empty the dishwasher. I make my bed, and then I make coffee and I go outside with my boyfriend and we sit and watch the sunrise. And that is the start of every day.
Oh, so that means you're getting up early. Just
Very
watch
early.
the sunrise. Like what? 5 and
5, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But no alarm. That's just wake up time. We just wake up then.
Yeah. The flow on sort of question is, how do you deal with travel? Because I found that routines and, and times, of course, change, time zones and that type of thing. Do you have some sort of go-tos that help you a lot there?
So with travel, I try to get on this time zone where I'm going straight. As soon as I'm on the plane, I try and get on the time zone. Okay. I don't really eat on airplanes. I drink a lot of water.
Yep.
I don't really eat. I certainly don't drink alcohol on airplanes. And then when I land, even though I might be really tired, I don't let myself go to sleep until the sun's gone. And then usually I'm okay getting on the local time if I do that.
Yeah. Sun is so important, right?
Yeah. Very much.
That's this complete other topic, like light and artificial light and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it?
Oh.
Isn't it? That's a big topic to unpack, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I have to send you back.
Though.
Yeah. So fun. Hey, thank you so much for making time. What are your social media handles to sort of follow you a little bit more actively rather than going on the websites?
So on Instagram, it's Dr. Libby, DRLIBBY is the handle there. And then Facebook, it's Dr. Libby Live.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
I really, really appreciate it.
Thank
so
you,
nice
Sebastian.
to connect. Thanks for all the wisdom.
Thank you for all the ways you care and the way you demonstrate that with your family and also to the world through your business. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope today's conversation inspired you. If you found value in it, please share this episode with someone who could benefit from its insights. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow us to stay in the loop and have the best life ever.